You're listening to The Music Business Buddy with me, Johnny Amos, podcasting out of Birmingham in England. I'm the author of the book, The Music Business for Music Creators. I'm a music creator myself with credits on a variety of major and indie labels as a writer or producer. I'm also a senior lecturer in music business and music creation. Wherever you are, whatever you do, consider yourself welcome to this podcast and to a part of this community. I am here to try and educate and inspire music creators from all over the world in their quest to achieving their goals by gaining a greater understanding of the business of music. Okay, so the theme for this week is about the role of a musical director. Now, when I thought about putting together an episode on this subject, I thought, I've got to call my friend Magic, right? Martin Johnson, who is an outstanding musician, an example for all musicians in terms of how he functions, how he operates. He is one of the hardest working people you could ever wish to meet in your life. In fact, I can't imagine a harder working musician. He's just constant. I mean, even just booking him in for this interview for the podcast, it was, he's so casual about his schedule. He'd be like, oh, I'm just going to Dubai on Saturday, but I'll be back. I'll only there for a few hours. I'll come back. Then I've got a gig in London. But should we do this the next day? You know, he's non-stop. He's like one of those Duracell bunnies, you know, he's just constantly going. He's amazing. He is ruthlessly efficient. He's warm. He's kind. He's knowledgeable. He's very experienced. And I asked him about what it's like to be a musical director, because a lot of people know him as a drummer. I mean, that's through his work with the likes of Barbarellas and Larry Adler, the Tarantinos, Chris Thompson, Guthrie Govan, Dennis Stratton, loads and loads of people that he continually plays for. But he's also a producer and obviously a musical director. He's a great recording engineer, and he's just very, very on top of his own career. He's very, very sustainable. He's got his own studio that he records remotely for people from all over, and he travels a lot. And as a result of all the musical projects that he's been involved with over the years, whether it be studio or live, he's become such a go-to person as a kind of fixer, as an organizer, and as a musical director. So that's the role that I'm going to talk to him about in this interview. I hope you find it useful. Here we go. The mighty Magic Martin Johnson in the house. Welcome to the Music Business Buddy. Good to have you here, mate. How are you?
Thanks for asking me to be involved, mate. It's an honour to be incorporated into your book as well. So hopefully this will tie in with what I was saying there.
Double trouble, mate, in the book and on the podcast. I love it. Now, Magic, we could talk about lots and lots of different things, especially in regards to the numerous roles that you play in the music business. But let's hone in on the role of being an MD or a musical director. Now, it might be that there's people listening to this right now that are not familiar with what that role is, what it entails. So let's just talk about your role there for a minute. What do your kind of duties look like in preparation of a show or a tour?
Oh, wow. It depends on the artist that I'm working with. So if it's but let's go for like, I suppose, the most heavy duty kind of thing, which is where I'm in charge of. Now, being a drummer, I'm often in charge of the playback rig.
Okay.
So it will be getting the stems from the artist from the studio, if I've not been involved in the studio recordings a bit, or the producer, stemming them out, working out what bits are going to be live replaced, which bits are going to be layered upon, making that kind of, I suppose, executive decision, not necessarily even consulting the artist sometimes, because depending on the artist, they don't, they don't really need to know. They don't really want to know. They just hand it over to me and expect me to do that. So it will be liaising with production, getting the stems, put them into a format on whatever stage player we're using that's going to work. Often it will involve me behind the scenes really totally remixing stuff from the live environment.
Interesting. Okay.
And then tweaking things, doing the usual housekeeping things of making the files really tight, making sure the clicks are all synced, making sure, obviously, I'm predominantly got the click, but often with in-ears these days, a lot of the other band will want a bit of click in there as well, maybe not too much. Funny enough, as a drummer, I always try and err on the side of telling the rest of the band, look, don't have the click unless you really need it, unless there's dead air and where I'm not playing, because I want them to follow my groove, because I might push and pull the groove a little bit in the click, and I want them to follow me, not to follow the click. So that's one thing. But then, so it's getting all that ready, and then once I'm happy with it, sort of playing through with it a little bit, and then the other really important thing is back up, and back up. So I'll have it on the main stage player, I'll have a backup stage player, I'll have it on my laptop. If generally we try not to use laptops live on stage, even though they are really solid these days with like solid state drives and stuff. I still don't trust them. Computers go wrong, as we can find out on this call at the minute. My video camera's freezing. And so I'll have it. It's a lot of it is, I'd call it less musical direction and more making things ship shape and watertight and contingency plans for everything.
Wow, very organised. Okay,
and then,
so
sorry, and then just so I mean, the question I get is like, MD, the fancy word of MD. I kind of fell into that. Really, it's not something I would say. I now sometimes add it to my list of jobs just because I've kind of fallen into it, but I've never set out to do it. And quite often also it will be fixing the musicians.
So for the benefit of people that don't know, fixing doesn't mean, you kind of putting, I don't know, plasters or bandages on the musicians. It means...
Well, it pretty much can be sometimes, but yes, musically it definitely can be that. But yeah, so traditional term of a fixer, in the sessions and in the film scoring world, would be someone who is hired to compile the correct musicians for the session, those who are suitable. So it would be a database of musicians. You go, I know they'll nail that style of music, or they've got the right sound, or the right headspace. So I will generally be fixing the musicians or recommending the musicians. Most of the time, the artists don't even question it, because that's why they've got me involved. They know I'm not going to get anyone that's going to make them look bad, and more importantly, make me look bad. And not in an egotistic way, but, still want to do a good job. So the traditional term of like being an MD, where you're being more conductor and really telling people what to play, no, it's not that at all. You're getting people on your team who you trust, who intrinsically are probably going to make the right decisions 95% of the time, and you hand it over to them. Regarding my role with musical side as an MD, aside from the compilation of the actual tracks and making sure everything's shipshape, it's just the ability to make quick decisions and make assertive decisions when required. It's just being quick, and not quick to the expense of quality, but quick being let's not procrastinate. Let's try stuff out. Or if there's something that's 50-50, like we could go this way on this particular phrase or another way, I'll use my gut instinct to go, that's the one that feels right, and have the casting decision, I suppose.
Okay, interesting. So actually, there's a lot of... would it be fair to say then that you kind of start a kind of sense of live pre-production with parts of post-production from a studio session?
Yes, so definitely I would say I'm more, God, in the MD kind of situation, I suppose I would say I'm more in the role of a compiler of the parts. I never call myself a producer or even a mix engineer. I just
I would. I've heard you.
No. When I compare it to people who I love, whose workflow is really quick and they really know what they're doing, I fanny around. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just, it's trial by fire and trial by by mistakes and trying to find the right way. But
that's not true, listeners. That's not true at all.
Well,
carry on,
thank
mate.
you. I think you've been very charitable. But I think, part of the role of being an MD for me really is having all the nuts and bolts on the good ship that you're sailing on is all watertight, and having those quick decisions to steer a course should a little storm come up. That's my analogy for the day.
That's a great way of putting it. Okay, so let's kind of flash forward to the day of a show.
Yeah.
What does your role look like on that day? Is it just a continuation of that kind of fire prevention sort of attitude, or is it something more than that?
It's okay. So leading, probably let's talk even like a couple of weeks before the show, leading up. It would been liaising with tour managers, management. Um, I'll also get involved, and obviously with front of house crew and monitor crew. So whoever's I've got, either sometimes I'll book the front of house engineers. I've got my kind of A team of people that I would go to if they're not out on the road. So I'd be liaising with them ahead of the time, liaising with stage plot. If it's like a festival thing, they need to know stage plots, not your own crew. It will be looking through the channel list on the desks and what they've got and what we're sending out, just checking everything's there. So it's almost it's not tour management, but it's difficult because the role sometimes is the MD thing is you're the point of contact for the artist, you're the point of contact musically for them, but nowadays, it can't just be that. I've got to talk all the tech stuff as well. I'm talking, stage plot, even where power sockets are, all that kind of thing, making sure the stage plan is correct. So there's all that. Quite often I'll be the one that communicates with the band as well. So I'll get the details from the management or the artist, usually from the management, or if there's a TM on it. The TM will often negotiate with everybody or send all the details out for the show and sound checks and all that kind of thing. But often I will be doing it. So then we roll forward towards the day. Obviously, being a drummer, I've got shed loads of kit to set up and make sure the logistics of that there. But then I've also got the playback rig, and if I've got any triggers and samples and pads and electronics, we've got all that to contend with. So it's a big old setup for me. And in between that, if I haven't got a tech, I'm then also trying to negotiate on the day, on the site with the crew, with the front of house and monitors, and also sometimes because I'm there usually earlier than the artist, and often the tour manager will be driving the artist. I'm there on site early, so quite often I'm on the first point of call with catering and hospitality as well. So you kind of like I'm sort of wearing a zillion hats, not just the MD hat. I mean, in a way, by the time it gets to show day, I'm not really MDing anymore. I'm just making sure everything's in place. I should have done. I mean, if I haven't done the prep before that day, then I'm just going to be swamped.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So if you've done your prep correctly, then there's kind of less to do on the day, like a lot of things, I suppose.
Yeah, and then on the day, it's mainly logistics of people being in the right place and things being in the right place at the right time.
Okay. And what about the actual? I mean, let's think about the actual musicians that you work with, because you're kind of, as you alluded to earlier, you're also responsible sometimes for fixing, i.e., bringing in the right, guitar player or vocalist, horn player, whoever. How much flexibility is there for those musicians on their parts, and how do you kind of communicate creative ideas with them?
Yeah, good question. Most of us who are seasoned old pros, i.e., been doing it for bloody years with bags under the eyes, I suppose I'm going to trust the people I know who have a similar outlook to me, not musically necessarily, but in musical ethos, as in they can identify very quickly what are the killer parts in the tune that need to be there night after night. What are the underlying motifs or what the audience is expecting to hear. Things, it might even just be a little guitar lick, it might be a little line which isn't obviously part of the melody or the hook line, but it is still there as something for someone's ear will latch onto. So it's having those musicians who. So if I just roll this back, as we say when we're lecturing, it's like it's taken as read. If you're going to be a pro, it's taken as read. You've got to be shit hot at your instrument. End of story. Yeah. That's not even in question. That doesn't even come into the table because you wouldn't even be on my phone list if you weren't that. Yeah. So then after that, the next thing is, are you going to play what's right for the song and lose your ego?
Okay.
Now we've all got an ego because obviously we won't get out of bed. We won't try and be very good. So there's a healthy ego and there's an unhealthy ego. And those of us who are really driven have a healthy ego where we're just trying to do the best we can all the time. And we do have an opinion, we do have an identity, but we're not frightened to relinquish that for the good of the common good. So the musician's whole book will be obviously brilliant at what they do on their instrument, but they'll also have that balance of when can I bring a bit of me into it and when should I be playing the part. So literally probably 80 to 85% in pre-production and rehearsals, all those bits will be there. And then it will be just a little bit, someone go, oh, what do you think of my tone on this? Or think I should do this? Sometimes, actually, quite often, the musicians I get are so kind of, given to the music that I'm the one that's actually gearing them up and going, I want you to set yourself on fire there. I want you to take that, make it your own. Have your moment. This is a live environment. We're transferring that energy from a studio recording to live, and there needs to be some kind of energy differences.
Interesting. Okay, so therefore, let's say, for example, there's a lead guitar player that says, "Right, okay, shall I do that solo after the second chorus?" And you're kind of thinking about the stems and the setup for the track, and then you go, "Well, I can pipe in a rhythm guitar there from the studio."
Totally.
Is that the kind of thing that you might kind of liaise upon?
In fact, it'll be liaising on before we even get into the studio for pre-production when I'm compiling the tracks. So first thing I'll do is if I've got a new track from an artist, there's like loads of new stuff coming out for next year for the Bewitched Girls, and it's like when I get the stems for that, the first thing I'll do is hear the overall mix as it's meant to be done by the producer, the mix engineer, and I'll have the stems separately, and then literally within 2 listens max, I'll probably go, well, that's going to work. That works for the studio, but doesn't work for live. It's not got enough energy, or because it's a totally different environment.
Yeah.
You have to present it a different way. The color, for want of a better description, the colors have to be more vibrant.
Okay, so then, see, that's where your taste comes into it, right? Is your
that's
taste?
That's where the options come into it. Where straight away my gut instinct, I listen to it and go, oh, that could be. Or we could extend that section, or we could open that up, or or whatever it might be, or at that point, I'll have that discussion with the guitarist and go, right, here's the parts, here's some of the stems. I'm thinking this, and this, and we'll probably have a Zoom call these days. Probably have a Zoom call, and we'll play it down the wire, and just thrash it out. And 90% of the time, 95% of the time, it's pretty much what I've thought. The guitarist will probably go, yeah, cool. But then I'll ask their advice on, would you rather play the rhythm part or that little kind of motif, or would you, or vice versa? And it will be just not a negotiation. It will be a discussion on it.
And then you can just substitute, or take out that part from the track, or they can double with it maybe if you leave it in
absolutely.
there.
It depends. Yeah, it depends. So sometimes on key parts, sometimes there will be doubling, or there'll be a shadow part underneath. And that's largely to do with what if situation. What if the guitarist lead goes down at that point, or a patch cable goes down, and there's that really important motif suddenly isn't there. So quite often, there's certain lines where it will be a definite known part of the song, and I might just have it there as a shadow. So when we're doing it live, the guitarist is not miming, they're playing it, but it almost be like a shadowed kind of, not quite as loud as double tracked, but that kind of vibe where it's there, so that if something did go down, there would be still that element in there.
Yeah, the little insurance policy as well, so that things don't dip. Okay.
And also then live as well, we've got that thing of where the actual front of house engineer can give a wide spread on the guitar, for example. We can do a slight different EQ setting, and it's just going to fatten it up, or it's going to give it a different character. So it's there. It's there for a real reason, not just backup. It's there, but it's also there as a backup in case the shit hits the fan and that goes down.
Right. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. I was talking to Bob Knight, well-respected fixer for bands.
Well, great drummer, first of all, and he's fallen into the fixing, same as I've fallen into like the MDing kind of fixing.
Yeah, well, it's his own fault for being so organised, much like you, really, isn't it? And he was talking about how much MIDI is now used rather than just kind of playing 2-track and playing 2-click on that track. And playing back everything with audio. He was talking about how much MIDI events are kind of incorporated into a live show, to kind of take away the need for guitar players to hit their booster pedals in choruses and things like
So
that.
like using patch changes and stuff like that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Are you kind of seeing an increase in that kind of thing?
It's bizarre. It's still relatively new to some players and handing over that trust, but it's certainly something that's becoming a little bit more escalated in the scene.
Okay.
Yeah. So now, I think that happens a lot more when you've got laptops and stuff that are really super solid. I still don't trust them. I
Okay.
still, um, you can do MIDI events. So some of the stage players have got like the old Cymatic and now the B Beat, which you use in live, which I've also got the synchronized video with for the backdrops.
Okay.
You can send MIDI events out on that, and it is possible for then connect that to something like Ableton, for example, to trigger then your patch changes. So yeah, definitely. I mean, I use a few patch changes with my SPD when I'm changing things. It will just give a little code and it will change my sounds automatically for me. It's definitely something that's on an increase. I think at this moment, I won't particularly trust it unless you've got a dedicated playback engineer at the side of the stage. Because
Okay.
that's something that's increasing, an increasing thing that's happening, where you'd have a dedicated playback engineer, and it might be one of the techs who's very well up on sort of. And during the show, they'll be monitoring what's going on with the playback rig and have a redundant rig there just in case. It is
That
certainly
makes sense.
something.
That's an independent job right there, isn't it? I
Pretty
mean,
much an independent job, or they might be multitasking, doing certain things during setup, and then during the show they've got this extra job, which is just watching the playback engine.
okay.
I'm still at a stage where, because I've done playback stuff since I was 18, I've gone through so many different ways of doing playback, and I still don't trust anything other than the old Cymatic audios, which were rock solid, but they don't
Oh
make
yeah,
them
you
anymore.
rave about those, don't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then there's a newcomer called the B Beat, which is incredible piece of kit. I've taken it out on about 20 shows so far, synced with video, and it's been rock solid. The only thing that's not been rock solid is me going, "Where's the menu?" Because the menu is slightly different, and setting up the shows. But
Oh,
um,
a B beat.
the B
Okay.
Beat, and they are literally, the size of a, I don't know, size of a small mixer at best, like a 4 or 5 channel mixer,
Oh
and
wow.
it runs. At the minute, we're just, depends on the act. I'm running 6 to 8 separate stems plus synchronized HDMI video as well. And literally, I just hit play
Wow.
and it goes.
Okay. That's very interesting. Okay.
So to answer your question, I would love to investigate more, like using Ableton for all my patch changes and stuff. But that just requires me to either run the show from Ableton directly, or would mean I do MIDI commands out of the BB to trigger Ableton. And in a minute, a lot of my stuff is kind of flying in and flying out, so I have to also have it as a mobile rig that I can fit in hand baggage.
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
So there's a
yeah.
little bit of
Okay.
limitation there, and not only the cost of freight and stuff around these days, but also just the reliability of airlines is just a nightmare.
Okay.
I
That's
mean,
a good.
literally these days, I used to fly with cymbals, but obviously backline would be brought in for me. Guitarists used to fly with the guitars. Now a lot of time we're requesting those on the backline rig when we arrive at the country, so people are playing not their own instruments. Only because if you're doing a fly in, fly out, half the time the luggage is going missing at the minute. It's just bonkers.
Okay. So you have to kind of. Oh wow, God. There's so
So
many eventualities.
there's a contingency plan. You have to think ahead, for the travel logistics.
God, there's so many things to think about there. What about that, the sort of liaising side of things? Are you, I mean, you've alluded to this a little bit, but are you, who are you dealing with the most when it comes to being a musical director? Are you liaising mainly with tour managers, or are you talking to booking agents? Are you talking mainly to the band's management, or does it vary?
Quite often in the initial role as an MD, it will be with the artist direct. Um,
To kind of understand their vision?
yeah. Well, there's that. Yeah, and literally, whether it's because the way I am, but it's people are happy to talk to me. They know I'm not going to pester them. So I've got some very nice chunky phone numbers in my phone book that I then would never give away to anybody, but those artists will quite happily talk to me directly and phone me and text me or whatever, or WhatsApp me. and would rather deal with me directly. Then the management might come in just to oversee generally the logistics of things for the show day, and then there'll be like, we know what it's like, a myriad of people CC'd in on emails. So the tour manager, management, at that point, maybe not the artist.
Okay.
So it depends what hat I've got on that day. So if it's a STEM creation, get in the mix. So if I'm getting the mix, so the artist will say, okay, I've got some new songs, we want to take this out on the road, or someone will say that. So my first thing will be, okay, right, I need to liaise with whoever was done the mix or the production on this, liaise with them, get what I want from them. So tell them what I want, STEM-wise. Not just in resolution, but also in actually what parts, when I've heard it, and go, right, can I have that bit separate? I need all that bit separate, all these. Then I'll be sitting down and compiling and doing that pre-production thing of getting what I think is good for a stage track and having those discussions with what I'm going to replace with the other instruments. And then when it gets closer to show day, it'll be a little bit of dotting the I's and crossing the T's with the artist just to stay in the loop. But then after that, it'll be pretty much either the TM or the management that I'm dealing with.
Okay. Wow. Interesting. Okay. I mean,
I don't deal with booking agents. I don't deal with the bookers.
No, that makes sense.
I'm not interested in them in the nicest possible way.
No, that makes sense. I kind of figured that was the case. I just wanted to ask you, from the benefit of those that are wanting to head into this live sector world and not knowing kind of, who they would be dealing with. With that in mind, and kind of final question to you, mate, on this is, what advice can you give to emerging live music professionals, that possibly have an interest in either being a live musician in a kind of, national or international live scene setup, or maybe even those that then want to take it a step further into being a musical director? They need a lot of skills. They'll hopefully listen to this episode, listen to you and learn a lot. But what advice can you give to that kind of person right now in the music industry?
Right, let me step back then, because one thing we haven't broached upon, and this might allude into that question, is, as I said, I fell into doing the MDing. But you will find, like Bob, like you mentioned Bob, you'll find a lot of, it's a very bizarre thing, a lot of drummers become good mix engineers, good front of house engineers, or good MDs. And I think there's a reason for that. It's because of the instrument we play. And I think psychologically, we're like the goalkeeper in a football team. We're seeing the whole pitch in front of us. Of course, we've got an ego. We're bloody drummers, but we know that essentially we're the engine room behind everything. Okay, so although we secretly know we're the most important people on the stage, we don't let anybody else know that, right? Unless they piss us off, in which case they soon know. But I suppose my analogy with that is I think drummers tend to have become MDs quite often, and they fall into that. Not because my music theory isn't as good as someone who's sitting down at a piano 8 hours a day, right? But I know what sounds right.
Yeah.
And sometimes that goes against music theory. Sometimes you do things where you go, well, and sometimes I've worked with musicians where their theory will get in the way, and they go, well, that shouldn't work. I went, but does it fucking sound right?
Right.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, there you are. That's your ears and your gut feeling are king.
Yeah.
Right. If but I think as a drummer, you kind of fall into that. And so I fell into it, I think, and because you hopefully are relatively organised, you can obviously play, but there's that other thing of you as a drummer, you're seeing the band from behind most of the time when you're on stage. You're hearing the overall soundscape as it's happening, and you can watch audience reactions really well. So I think intrinsically, drummers, if they're attuned to it, just have this thing. I'm not saying exclusively drummers, but I think it's something that's definitely a characteristic. So to any MDs, or people who want to get into it, first of all, you've got to have it's not all about you having the best music theory and best music knowledge. You have to have great music knowledge, as in be a fan of music and have a massive and diverse listening. And that comes from every musician should listen more. We should all listen more to music for pleasure,
Yeah.
But I suppose the thing is, it's you don't have to have the greatest music theory, but you have to have a good arrangement head, a good production head. It doesn't mean necessarily you've got to be a brilliant mix engineer, but you've got to go, oh, that bit would sound good there, or that bit needs to come down in level, or that needs a different tone. You've got to, but that's from not being involved in the individual parts, but seeing the individual parts as a whole.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think if you want to become a great MD, it obviously really helps if you're really shit hot, and that's why great like West End MDs are like tend to be pianist, keyboard players. You've got to have a good degree of music theory, but it's not the be all and end all. The most important thing is big ears, big heart for the music. Sometimes going on gut instinct, but being able to make quick decisions in a nice way, but an affirmative way. I don't know. It's a difficult one to yeah. And then the other thing is just really be super prepped.
Yeah. That's definitely very important. I'm just thinking, I mean, something interesting there, right? Two things that you just said there that have really captured my imagination, right? Number one, your ability to watch an audience. You're in the center of the stage very often, but you are often towards the back of the stage. It puts you in a perfect position to be able to gauge reaction.
Yeah.
Never really thought about that before. And secondly, you mentioned about kind of musical directors. If you were to compare what you do to, let's say, somebody in the West End theatre, for example, yeah, okay, there would be, classically trained pianists and stuff like that. But let's think about this for a minute, right? Your role has become a hybrid role between technology and musical arrangement, amongst other skills, such as, your ability to, manage people and bring the best out of them and that kind of thing. I wouldn't mind betting actually a lot of West End directors, as superb as they are, might struggle in your kind of role if they're not as technologically as advanced or as informed as you are. Would that not be correct?
I think possibly in the old days, but the West End now is full of tech, so I think most people are on it. To be fair, I think that yeah.
Well, that set me straight. That's fine then.
No. Only because there is so much now. Not tracks as much, but there is still a lot of tech on there. But I think definitely, just because you're an MD in one environment doesn't mean you can be an MD in another environment. And the other important thing is like the general public will be incredibly shocked, maybe surprised at how these days there is little rehearsal time and prep with the artist. So the days of having 2 weeks, 3 weeks at No Miss Studios or wherever and doing your pre-production and going in like a day job and really fine-tuning the show are gone. A lot of the times now we're showing up, we maybe have a dusting the cobwebs off day with the artist, or for example, leading up to dates, if there's new material, there might be just one day of rehearsal.
Really?
And that might literally be in the morning, I'm there with the band. And then by the afternoon, the artist is coming. And if I've got my band in a position where the artist comes in and literally runs through each song once or twice and goes, bloody hell, it's killer. I've done my job. Then they're happy.
Okay.
They've saved budget. They know we can do it that quickly. But the other thing then is quite often sometimes the artist might have the studio version in their head and not this slightly rearranged live version, even though I'll record all the rehearsals and send it out to them. So my job as an MD is, and this came to my head actually recently. We did a big festival in the summer, and I literally showed up and went, I haven't even listened to my own drum parts yet.
Really?
Because I'm taking care of everybody else first.
Right.
I knew what they were. Don't get me wrong. I've played them before, and I had played them. But I'm like, I'm bizarrely. This doesn't sound like a good thing. I'm less prepared on my own parts in some of those environments than I would be if I was just a freelance player.
Right. Okay.
Because I'm taking care of everyone else's business first of all, and then when I'm on stage, if the artist has got that studio arrangement in the head and I know they're a little bit shaky, I'm looking out for them, eyes up, ears out, and eyes up, looking out for them, and they might just look at me from the side of, slight little glance during the dance routine, and I'm either shaking my head or I'm just nodding at them to go, yes, we're going to the next section, or no, we're not going to the next section. So I'm kind of like, those visual cues are really important. And I think some of the reason I get booked is, I got the prep and I can play and blah, blah, blah. But I'm just like a little safety net on stage for the artist.
Right.
They know they can look round at me and I'm going to catch their glance and go, no, you're going to screw that up. Or the first thing they'll do quite often, like with Rich Girls sometimes, if they muck a passage up, they'll just walk over to the drum and went, I fucked that up, didn't I? I went, yeah, and I'll nod my head while we're playing and carry on. But they're looking out and they're looking up for, they know that I'm going to clock it and they know that I'm going to clock every mistake. But equally, I'm there to shepherd them through it. I'm a shepherd. They're my sheep, and I'm making sure they get into the pen correctly at the end of the day. And I think that's a really important part of it, because that's just a whole awareness on stage thing. If the artist then goes, every show's killer, and they go, it might even be a subconscious thing, but they don't know really why it's killer. But it might be they suddenly realise, oh, it's because he's always looking out. He's looking out for our back all the time.
Yeah, that's very important. That reminds me. I was watching a documentary recently about Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, and like their sort of long time relationship, and the fact that they've been playing together for like 50 years for some of them, and the drummer,
Max Weinberg.
Yeah, Mighty Max Weinberg. Yeah. I knew you'd know that. You know everything, man. And he was saying that he's been playing with Bruce so long now that, like, the way Springsteen does that thing before a song, 1, 2, 3, and they're going. And he'll say that even though there's a lot of catalogue and there's a lot of songs that sit roughly around the same tempo range, he can literally tell what song they are going to do by the way that Bruce counts.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
It blew my mind, man. I was like, how does he do? But that's what happens when you're playing with so many different people. Yeah, you're switching genres, and you're like, you must be so in tune on such a level with so many people.
Oh, I don't know.
You must be.
I haven't thought about that. It's just, it's all the same stuff, just different buckets.
You're so modest.
I mean, the skill set's the same. I mean, no, the skill set's not the same. The principles are the same. You're either going to be, as a musician, what's your first thing, other than the ability to play your instrument, what's the first thing you should have down? Listening.
Yeah, listening. Yeah, I'm glad you said that.
Listening and reacting and not overthinking.
Right, okay, yeah.
Right, so I trust a lot of my musical decisions are made on not even on, certainly not on the head. They're certainly made sometimes in the heart, but mainly from gut instinct.
Okay, and you trust that gut instinct. That's the key thing.
99% of the time, it's right. When I've been on like studio sessions, and then I've played the part, and then the producer goes, "Oh, right, can we do another one of that?" Yeah. Right, can we just try this? I'm hearing this, and I'm sitting there shaking my head, going, "I wouldn't play this." I've just gone, and literally 3 hours later, you come back and they go, "Oh, actually, no, we refer the original couple of takes." Well, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. It's because, you brought me in to bring something to the table, and, I kind of vaguely know what I'm doing, what's might be best for the music. Yeah, so it's like, I trust my gut instinct a lot.
Yeah,
but that can only come from like back catalogue of like as a kid listening to shed loads of music.
Yeah. And just feeling comfortable with being uncomfortable at times, I guess, right? From having that encyclopedia of music in your mind.
Yeah, and and I think a lot of people do. I think that's sometimes in a way where someone who is, got a really incredible music theory background, sometimes that can overtake the actual just does it sound right vibe.
Yeah. Same as songwriting.
Start to think about it too much. Like, does it feel good? Yeah. Is it wrong? Yeah. But does it feel good? Yeah. Therefore it's right.
just like the inception of song creation, man. Yeah, I find that so often. It's like, this shouldn't work. Yeah, but it does though, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
and isn't it lovely when you find something you go, this really shouldn't work, but it does, and you found something that most people would discard straight away, but you're the one that's holding on to it.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, that's the memorable stuff.
Yeah, and no, talking studio stuff for me, and I suppose in a way it's like the live environment as well. What is a perfect performance? There's no such thing. And so often the perfect performance technically is just soulless. And the
That's a good way of putting it.
most important thing what's the most important the records that I still cherish and I still go back to are not just the ones that as a kid they meant something to me. Obviously that's quite a big thing. But the other thing is all the records that I love that I will listen to for days on end even now are the ones where it feels like it could fall off the edge at moments at any point, and that creates the excitement.
Okay, that's interesting. Do you know what, Magic? Many years ago, my brother and I went to watch Brian Wilson do Smile live for the first time ever at the Royal London Festival Hall. It's a very, very special moment, and just seeing him back on the stage was just unbelievable. Seeing what he did. And then it was really, really special. It'll stay with us forever. It was amazing. However, a few months later, we went to go and see him again up in Liverpool, and they had got like his whole band. They were, elite, LA session musicians. You probably know half of them, mate. But they had got. This is going to sound strange, but they got too good.
Yeah.
It just felt, it started to feel a little bit, and I hate to use this word, but cabaret.
Yeah, a little bit formulaic and kind of like mapped out.
Yeah, they'd just been doing it so well, night after night after night, that it had almost kind of, it had ascended in musicality, but descended in kind of feel and fear.
Yes. Yeah, there's a really good album to reference that kind of thing for me, and it always sticks in my head from the moment I bought it. There's a double album out by The Police, live album, and the first CD is them live back in 70 something, and then the second CD is them on the Synchronicity tour. And the one I prefer the most is the early stuff when it's really punky, really edgy, and about to fall apart at any moment.
Oh, really?
Technically, they're all over the fucking place. Absolutely,
Okay.
It just shouldn't work. But the energy and the vibe is just incredible. It's like, you put it on in your car and you'll be like going at 120 mile an hour before you realise, because you're just listening to it and going, oh my God. And it's those kind of, I'm not saying it's you have to have those moments, I think. Yeah. Or if you haven't got those moments, even if it's perfect like pop music and it's all bang on, you've still got to have those little moments where the player, you let a player, like I said, you let the player unleash a little bit and go, no, I want you to actually just set the world on fire at that point, because no one's expecting it. And then,
yes, exactly. And that's that's an interesting subject. Yeah. Okay. Magic, we better wrap up. I know how ruddy bloody busy you are, and for the benefit of the listeners, we are recording this very early in the morning because of it's because of how in demand you are, mates. And I appreciate you doing this, because I think there'll be listeners today that have got a lot from listening to you. And I thank you for that and for your contribution here today to the music business, buddy. Martin Magic Johnson, you the man. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you very much, Johnny, but you're the man back, man.
Oh, no. He's the man. He's brilliant. Hardest working musician I've ever known in my life. He's amazing. I've toured with him. I've studied with him. He's fantastic. I hope you enjoyed that interview, everybody. Until next time, may the force be with you.
The music